All right. What is going on, everybody? It is currently 6:26 p.m. Thursday, February 8th, 6:26 Central Time. So, we got Super Bowl Sunday this week. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I'm saving that for last. I am going to give a breakdown. I am going to give my pick, but I'm saving that for last. There are some topics I want to discuss first. First, with the New York Jets. So, I should have talked about this last week. I forgot. Uh, in the middle of the episode, like mid or not even mid podcast, like as soon as I ended my podcast last week, I was like, we got to talk about the Jets. And it, I was like, well, I'm not doing it again. So I want to talk about the Jets this week. So an article came out from The Athletic, and it was about the Jets. And needless to say, it did not put the Jets in a good light. And specifically, like, it really made them look incompetent. Now, this is the Jets we're talking about. This is an organization that has been incompetent since Joe Namath. They had some decent years with Chad Pennington and Eric Mangini, but for the most part, the Jets have been incompetent for a long, long time. And this is really saying something that I'm saying that. So the article gives like 30 different sources. There are different moments in the article where it mentions that Robert Saleh called a meeting and demanded members of his staff turn over their cell phones to check who was the leak in the building. Not really a good look. I mean, this isn't this isn't college. This is the NFL. Dudes just aren't going to hand over their phone, nor should they. Phone's your property. Now, unless it was, you know, a work phone, that's different. But I would imagine these guys are smart enough to not do that. But if it was a personal cell phone, I'd tell them to kick rocks. I'm not going to do it. Easier said than done. I'm a very non-confrontational person. I don't like confrontation. I'm very much yeah, okay, I'll just do what you say. But Robert Saleh allegedly asking his staff for cell phones so we can go through and see who's leaking information. He's also allegedly, the article says, doing research. This was post the Aaron Rodgers injury. He's doing research on the records of head coach lost starting quarterbacks so that he can relay the information to Joe Douglas, the general manager, or Woody Johnson, the owner, to try to save his job. It's just not a good look. And then last but not least, there are league sources saying that Joe Douglas is the assistant general manager and Aaron Rodgers is running the show. And it's just a mess with the Jets. And my immediate takeaway with the article is two things. One, with the Jets are a dumpster fire. No, worse than usual. And I'm shorting the shit out of them next year. Like, I don't care what you tell me. This roster is not that good. I didn't think it was last year, even when they got Aaron Rodgers. Everyone thought this roster was ready to win a Super Bowl, and I said, I'm not so sure. James and I said last year, I don't know how many times, we're not convinced this is going to work out with Aaron Rodgers and with the Jets. They don't think of their roster. What kind of weapons do they have offensively? It's Garrett Wilson and a bunch of guys. It's not a great unit. Their offensive line was trash. Breece Hall's a good player. And then defensively, pass rush is kind of inconsistent. We're made to believe that the Jets have this great defense, but I watched them several times during the season and they're getting their asses kicked. Now, how much of that was mailing it in? How much of that was being put in poor positions because the offense turned the ball over? It's probably all of the above. But the Jets are a dumpster fire right now. I would not trust them to make the playoffs next year. I think what you've seen this year is kind of what you're going to get. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to save the Jets. He's older. He's coming off an Achilles injury. I just don't see this team going anywhere. I don't see them making the playoffs, let alone winning the AFC East division. So prove me wrong, but I'm still surprised that Robert Saleh kept his job. And it feels like we're destined for this to be a circus show next year. Probably head coach gets fired in the middle of the season. GM probably gets fired after the season, maybe even the middle of the season too. And then, I don't know, probably Rodgers retires because he doesn't want to deal with that, or go somewhere else because he doesn't want to deal with it. And then what do the Jets become? Just terrible. And then, which brings me to my second point, is how much credit do the Packers get for hiding this information from the rest of the league? Like, clearly Rodgers, I don't want to say he's a tyrant, but clearly he's running the show. Which, going by his outrage in 2021 when he blew up and said he didn't want to go back to Green Bay, was kind of what it stemmed from. It wasn't so much that the Packers drafted Jordan Love. He wanted to say in personnel. He wanted more of a voice in personnel. And I get that. But I'm old school. I'm a firm believer. The GM puts the team together. The coach coaches the team, and the players play. You can have a voice. Doesn't mean they're going to listen. Or they should listen. Because I saw that not introductory, but press conference when Rodgers made his return to Green Bay in 2021, and he talked about how he wanted to keep some of the guys that Green Bay moved on from, and someone even pointed out to him in the press conference, like, you realize they were out of the league in a year or two after Green Bay moved on, and they wouldn't have made an impact or something along those lines. And Rodgers was kind of like, well, you don't know that. No, we do know. Like, so I think Green Bay deserves a ton of credit, not to just toot my team's horn, but they have done a really good job of masking this for the last couple of years. And honestly, Green Bay should have moved on in 2022, probably even 2021. But I think Green Bay regrets not moving on from Aaron Rodgers sooner. It's clear he brings dysfunction. And I love Aaron Rodgers. And this has nothing to do with his political views about vaccines, nothing like that. He's clearly a problem. And he was a problem in the building in Green Bay. I was too blind to see it, but it's evident now. Because it's now gone from Green Bay to New York. And there's no drama in Green Bay. We thought we were having a little bit of drama with Jair Alexander. And that was quashed recently. So, look at the common denominator here. It's Aaron Rodgers. And I hate to say it, I love the guy, but it's clear he's the problem. So, Jets, I don't know where you go from here. You've dug yourself into a hole. And I just think 2024 is going to be a disaster for the Jets. I don't think Robert Saleh appears to be in over his head. Nathaniel Hackett, that was another thing the article said that I forgot to write down, was Nathaniel Hackett doesn't really even have a coaching scheme type of relationship with Aaron Rodgers. They claim it's like a frat boy relationship. And again, that Aaron Rodgers is running the offense and running the show. And that's just a recipe for disaster. I mean, there's nothing else to say. So those are my thoughts on the New York Jets. Next one, I've been seeing way too many people talk about how the Bears need to stick with Justin Fields. I don't know what you guys were watching at the end of the season. He clearly isn't that not that he's not talented. He's clearly not that good. He can't throw from within the pocket. And I don't care what you tell me about Luke Getsy didn't know what he was doing, and the coaching let him down, the play calling let him down, because it was always someone else's fault with Justin Fields. It's always been someone else's fault the last few years with Justin Fields. He's got nothing to work with. Well, they got him. Cole Kmet was already there. They have a pretty good run game. They improved the offensive line this offseason. They got him DJ Moore. And then it's, well, he needs more. And now they're arguing, like, give him Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm like, well, why don't we just get Randy Moss to come out of retirement while we're at it? It's the whole point is it's not going to be this way. You don't just get to have, well, if he can have a top receiving core and a top O-line and a top this, that's not the way the NFL works, man. At some point, you got to overcome it. If you have the ability, you have to overcome it. You have to overcome your team's deficiencies. You know who did that for years? Tom Brady. You know who did that for years? Aaron Rodgers. So I don't understand these people who are making this argument that the Bears need to keep Justin Fields and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. It makes no sense. It is the dumbest argument I've heard. Like I listened to someone talk about it on a podcast today, this on Thursday, and I felt dumber listening to the conversation about them saying, "Well, you don't know what you have in Caleb Williams. You don't know what you have in Justin Fields." And you're entering year 4. You're entering year 4. And you're asking the same question that you've been asking the last 2-3 off seasons. What do you have in this guy? It's time to move on. Just a mess, man. An absolute mess. All right. My next topic. I wanted to touch up on this for a little bit. Big Ten and SEC decide to basically challenge the NCAA. And they're looking to solve the problems in college football, or maybe it was college athletics, I don't remember. But they're looking to solve their own problems. And I have some takeaways with this. Number one, the Big Ten and SEC are trying to solve problems that they created. They're the ones changing college football. They're the ones going out and plucking teams from these other conferences to make themselves look good, to make them more stable. And then that's what always has bothered me with Greg Sankey during the last year or so. He's like, well, we don't want to see the Pac-12 collapse, which ended up doing. But he was like, well, can't we? Why does this have to happen? Like, that was always kind of his argument, was this shouldn't have to happen. This is a shame, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you're the one who started this by getting Texas and Oklahoma. Well, first of all, it goes back even further than that. But getting Texas and Oklahoma has caused this domino effect. You got Texas and, like, do you think that you're not at fault here? I don't understand it. You get Texas and Oklahoma. Well, the Big Ten has to respond and get USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. Pac-12 falls apart. Big 12 picks up the scraps. And the SEC is left going, how'd this happen? It's just so ridiculous. And on top of that, these are the two conferences, spending the most money in NIL because they have the resources. I don't fault them for that, but they are the ones tampering and causing the transfer portal to be the mess that it is. And I'm not against the transfer portal. I am. I'm against tampering and convincing kids under the table to join the transfer portal and go somewhere else. That should be illegal. Like, that should be against the rules. You should not be allowed to talk to another player on another team and convince him to transfer. We'll give you X amount of dollars. There should be a salary cap, which, by the way, they don't want. The Big Ten and SEC don't want. So this whole, we're trying to fix it, when they're the ones that created the problem. It's like firemen trying to put out a fire that they started. But, I know I'm going to be in the minority on that one. Everyone's going to be like, yes, go Big Ten, SEC, stick it to the NCAA. And look, I'm all for that. The NCAA is useless these days, except to rule players out, of eligibility in college basketball, it seems. I guess in football, too. When the argument is dumb, why are they... you had the whole Devontae Walker thing from UNC. Why was he not eligible? NCAA just kind of shrugged. We don't know. We're just going to say he's ineligible. Then when he appeals, or I don't even remember how that went down, but he eventually got eligible. And did the NCAA fight it? Nope. It's one after another with the NCAA. Why are you here? You're not doing anything. You're not changing the sport. You're not making it better. You're a figurehead. That's all you are. And I was, even though I said how the Big Ten and SEC have created most of the problems in college football, I don't have a problem with them challenging the NCAA. The NCAA needs to be disbanded. We need to have a controlling governing body in college athletics, specifically football, and get everything on an even playing field. Now, that's where the Big Ten and SEC want to draw a line. And this brings me to another point. is we're one step closer to these conferences breaking away. And I originally thought that forming some kind of a super league was a ridiculous idea. I did it as I wrote a blog post about it about what if they created a Premier League for college football as a joke, like almost a joke. I didn't expect it to actually happen, and now, and if it did happen, I thought, we're decades away from it. Like we're clearly not. We are a year or two, maybe not even that, maybe not quite that short of a time, but we're close. We're much closer to it than I thought, of the Big Ten and SEC breaking away. And the second that happens is when they put in a cap on NIL, recruiting, etc. Once they do that, the Big Ten and SEC are gone. Now, I will say this. I always thought that the Big Ten and SEC would form some kind of a league that would resemble the pro model, like AFC, NFC, driven by TV networks. ESPN would support the SEC, Fox would support the Big Ten. Winner of the national championship would always be like the winner of the Big Ten, the winner of the SEC, and the college football Super Bowl. Now, I don't know if this has any weight, but I thought some underrated news of the past week was Fox, ESPN, and I think it was WD Sports, Warner, the company that owns TNT, I think Turner Sports, formed an alliance to have all of their streaming on one platform and all of their games on one platform. I don't know if that supports my idea of this Super League. Like, we'll just put it all on this platform, the streaming service that's going to come out with all these different networks. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But with the Big Ten and SEC challenging the NCAA pretty much to basically say, we'll take it from here, it just feels like we're one step closer to separation. And then it becomes only a matter of time before the networks step in and say, you need to cut these teams out of your conference. Because eventually these conferences, these schools and these conferences are going to turn on each other. You think Ohio State's going to tolerate Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern to be in their conference? No. You think Alabama's going to tolerate Missouri and Vanderbilt to continue to be in the SEC? No. They're all going to turn on each other eventually. And at that point, there's going to be separation, I think. And they'll be in their own tier, and everyone else is going to be left out. Whether or not they can survive, I don't know. I hope they can. Obviously, I'm a West Virginia fan, and I think we're going to be left out. And I hope we can survive. But the second that we don't, I'll be done with college football. I think these TV networks want college football to be like the NFL, where they can get 40 million viewers to watch a playoff game like Green Bay, San Francisco. But I'll be honest, I don't think it's ever going to happen. The NFL has more of a following than college football, for the most part. And it's a shame that it's gotten to this point. So I'm getting way off track here, but I just don't like the outlook of college football right now, or college athletics in general right now. It's a mess. I'm kind of torn, like I said, on what the Big Ten and SEC are doing. On one hand, I like it. I'd like to see it all under one governing body. I'd like to see some parity. I'd like to see it all on a equal revenue distribution like the NFL, but it's not going to happen. And the second that we start pushing for that, these big schools are gone. They're going to form their own super league. It's going to resemble the NFL. No limits on recruiting, no limits on NIL. And everyone else is going to be left out in the cold. It's coming. I feel pretty strongly about that. So I'm 20 minutes in. Not nearly as long of a podcast as I thought it was going to be today. So I'll go ahead and wrap it up here with my Super Bowl pick. So we got Chiefs, Niners. Right now, the Niners are a 2.5 point favorite. And I've had almost 2 weeks to think about this matchup. And the more I've thought about it, the more I'm just like, I don't know why the Chiefs are underdogs in this game. I think they control several advantages in this matchup. Number one, they have the better, by far better, head coach quarterback combination in this game. Number two, which team has the better offensive line? So I've already said better head coach, Kansas City. Better quarterback, Kansas City. Better offensive line. Honestly, neither of these offensive lines are spectacular. They're fine, maybe even good, but they're not great. There's vulnerability here. But which team has the better one? With Joe Tooney out, I lean San Francisco, but it's not by much. I lean San Francisco just because they have a future Hall of Famer at left tackle and Trent Williams. And Kansas City has been hit and miss along the offensive line all year. Now, they've played a lot better in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes has only been sacked twice in 3 playoff games. But I lean San Francisco. But anyway, I give San Francisco that advantage, but it's not a big one. Head coach, quarterback are heavily favored in Kansas City's favor. So, O-line, Niners, not by much. Defensive line. I think it's Kansas City, and it's not even close. We have this perception that San Francisco has a really good defensive front because it's some of the guys they had a couple years ago. So in 2019, they had a really good defensive front. They had a young Nick Bosa. They had a Eric Armstead in his prime. They had a D Ford in his prime. They had, at the time, DeForest Buckner, who's still a stud, but was in his prime. Well, Buckner's gone. D Ford's not around anymore. Eric Armstead, I think, is in his 10th year, maybe 9th season in the NFL. So he's getting older. All that's left is Nick Bosa. Javon Hargrave has not been the player that San Francisco signed in the offseason, or thought they were getting in the offseason. Chase Young has been a problem for the Niners since trading for him. He hasn't been the player they thought they were getting. And go back and look at that one of the touchdown runs by Jahmyr Gibbs, or throws, passes in the NFC Championship game. Chase Young's effort on the play is abysmal. So there's this misconception that the Niners have this great defensive front, and I don't think they do. They have Nick Bosa and a bunch of guys right now. It's just not that good. That's why their pass rush is inconsistent. That's why they've been gashed in the run game for the last 5 or 6 weeks. So I lean Kansas City. Chris Jones still playing at a high level. George Karlaftis looks like a really good player. Charles Omenihu, pretty good player. Better secondary. The Chiefs, not even close. This one's not even close. Justin Reed's a really good player. Trent McDuffie was an All-Pro this season. L'Jarius Sneed's a capable corner. Who does San Francisco have in their secondary? That is a huge weakness. Better offensive playmakers, probably San Francisco by a considerable margin. But, Travis Kelce has looked really good this postseason. Rashee Rice looks like a stud. MVS has made plays at times this playoffs. And Isaiah Pacheco is an effective runner. So, quarterback, head coach, there's not a big drop-off in the O-lines, although I give a slight advantage to San Francisco. Kansas City, I think, has the much better defensive front. Kansas City has the much better secondary. Offensive weapons, I lean San Francisco quite a bit. But most of those areas of rosters go Kansas City's way. And I look at the matchup, and I think Kansas City matches up pretty well with San Francisco's defense. San Francisco's defense initially was a strength. It has turned into a weakness since really the Arizona game in the regular season. I wrote on my blog that they have allowed close to 25 points per game since that Arizona game, excluding Week 18 because no starters played. but they're allowing close to 25 points per game and almost 150 rushing yards a game. I expect Kansas City to do what they've done all postseason, lean on Isaiah Pacheco, and I think they can gash San Francisco's defense, which has been a problem. On the other side, and plus, I think Kansas City's O-line, which isn't great, matches up well against San Francisco's defensive front. Like I said, San Francisco's defensive front has one difference maker. I think Andy Reid's going to know how to attack it. And similar to what Green Bay did, similar to what Detroit did, I think this is going to be a problem for San Francisco defending this offense. And if they can't get pressure on Mahomes, which I'm not sure they will with the way Kansas City's offensive line has played the last couple of weeks, if they can't get pressure on Mahomes, it could be a long day for San Francisco. On the other side, Kansas City's defensive front, I think, matches up very well with San Francisco's offensive line. The weakness of San Francisco's offensive line is in the interior. And Kansas City has Chris Jones, only one of the top 2 or 3, maybe even one, interior defensive lineman in the NFL. Oh, and then George Karlaftis is a really good edge rusher. And San Francisco's right tackle, even though, unfortunately, he went to West Virginia, isn't great. Oh, and then Kansas City secondary can match up with San Francisco's pass catchers. The one area that concerns me with Kansas City's defense is its ability to stop the run. San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan are going to lean on its run game. They're going to lean on Christian McCaffrey. They're going to commit to the run. He's not going to veer away from the run unless the game gets out of hand, which I don't think it will. And that does concern me. Kansas City's defense has struggled to stop the run. So there's a chance McCaffrey goes off in this game. So it really all comes down to Brock Purdy. Can he perform at a high level? He hasn't really done it in the playoffs. I know he had the one drive against Green Bay to win the game. He played pretty well. And then he did settle in against Detroit and make some plays. But for the bulk of the 8 quarters of playoff games for San Francisco, he's played well in 3 of them. Not even all 3, but 3 of the 8 quarters, he's played somewhat well. 5 of the 8, he has not played well at all. And with the Super Bowl on the line, Brock Purdy or Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes. So I'm going Chiefs to win. This would be history. It's history either way because if San Francisco wins, they'll win. That'll be their 6th Super Bowl, which would tie New England and Pittsburgh for the most in the NFL. If Kansas City wins, it's their 3rd with Mahomes, Reed, and Travis Kelce. And 4th as an organization. And then not to mention, it's also a back-to-back Super Bowl, which hasn't been done since New England in the early 2000s. So I think Kansas City matches up very well with San Francisco. I can't see Brock Purdy outperforming Patrick Mahomes. I just can't. I think both of these teams are going to run the ball and commit to the run and lean on the run. So I think the under is very much in play here. I think the over-under is currently 47.5. I'm leaning under right now. I think they're going to want to limit possessions. I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going to want Patrick Mahomes touching the ball. I don't think Kansas City wants Kyle Shanahan dialing up plays. So, few possessions, and I got more trust in Patrick Mahomes. That's all it comes down to. And then on top of that, which team do you think was going to get pressure on the quarterback? I lean Kansas City. Nick Bosa is going to have a hell of a game to win this game. For Brock Purdy's going to have a hell of a game, and Nick Bosa is going to have a hell of a game to win for San Francisco. That's asking a lot. And I'm not doubting Reed Mahomes. I did last year. I did entering the postseason, and I feel dumb. So I'm not going to do it. So that's my pick. I'm going Chiefs. Originally, that was my pick once the conference championships were done a couple Sundays ago. And I haven't really wavered. So that'll do it for me this week. Everyone have a good weekend. Enjoy your Super Bowl. See you later.